Alright, it's time for Tartarian Tales number 6, and this is going to be a chapter from a book called A Russian Journey. And the little bits of chapters here and there in these books, this one's from the late 1800s, are always just kind of little glimpses into what Tartary was, like what the people were, what they were like. Just little tiny bits of tidbits of information kind of keeps getting gathered from these little tales that I keep finding, and just hope you enjoy this one. This place right here is from a town called Yalta in the Crimean Peninsula, and this is a little thing called the Swallow's Nest, which I guess originated or was built in the early 1900s. I didn't find any construction photos, so I can't totally prove it. Yeah, 1912, but it looks really awesome. And like always, this place is like really cool, a really cool coastal place with some highlands and all these different things, and you can only imagine what it was like in its prime, basically when the ancient Tartars were roaming the land and building amazing things. So the book's from 1873 by Edna Dean Proctor, and it's just a pretty cool little glimpse. I'm not exactly sure of the story behind it or who ended up gathering the information. Maybe it was her in that time in the 1870s. Maybe it probably was, I guess. But it seems like a journey through Russia, and she describes different parts of it. So I'm going to go into it here, and then I'll talk a little bit about it after. So enjoy. And this chapter starts with a little poem which goes, "And still the Tartar loves the shores, the Euxine washes and deplores the glories of his race gone by, and often when the east winds sigh, the winds that warm from Asia blow, he dreams 'tis the murmur of hosts that go forth with Genghis and Timur strong. In his dark eyes flash, and he hears the song of the victors sung where the tent lines glisten, while couched on carpets Bokhara wove for the chiefs that over their pastures rove. The Khan and his jeweled ladies listen, but the wind goes by, and a roll of drums from the fort of the conquering Russian comes, and their ships sail over the Euxine's foam, and their bells ring clear from tower and dome. It was written in fate's decree," he cries, "Allah requite us in paradise." So here we go. A rosy sunrise flushed the sea as we anchored in the bay of Yalta. Precipitous wooded mountains circle it around, and the town, beginning at the water's edge, climbs a little way up the slope. It would be a lovely spot anywhere upon earth, but after the steppe it is paradise. No wonder the imperial family take the long journey from the cold marshes of St. Petersburg to look upon such scenes and breathe such air. Small boats conveyed the passengers ashore, and as we stepped onto the wharf we saw soldiers, already disembarked, sitting and standing in groups on the beach, cleaning their guns and adjusting their uniforms preparatory to entering the royal grounds. As the summer residence of the Tsar, a favorite bathing place and the center of traffic in Crimean wine, Yalta is important. During the warm season it is thronged with visitors, and it is with some trouble that we obtained rooms at the Hotel de Yalta, a rambling old house built round an interior court with bare floors and ancient furniture, yet delightful to us who since leaving Kazan had spent but a single night away from a boat, and that in the station house at Tsaritsyn one must descend the Volga in the dawn to appreciate the luxury of an ample apartment in a bed with 2 sheets and a white pillow cover. After breakfast we went in an open carriage with 3 horses abreast and a Tartar driver across the heights above the town to the Tartar village of Yusuf upon a hillside fronting the sea. Oh the pleasure of that ride! The sky blue as ours, with great fleecy clouds drifting over it, the balmy air lightly stirred by the breeze blowing to shore, below us the Euxine flashing in the sun, and about us the rich vegetation of this favored clime, pines, larches, junipers, cypresses, oaks, and walnuts, vineyards on the southern exposures, and in the valleys the mulberry, the pomegranate, the olive, the laurel, the fig, and sometimes the orange, fields of tobacco, blackberry bushes laden with fruit, and the lavish clematis overrunning the walls. With a fine instinct for natural beauty, the Tartars have everywhere chosen the loveliest sites for their village. This is of Yusuf clusters in the hollow and clings to the hillside overlooking the sea, while just beyond it precipitous cliffs rise from the water as if to guard the retreat, and the whole air is filled with the music of dashing wave and spray. It might have been transported from the slopes of Lebanon, so like it was to a Syrian town, with its small, flat-roofed houses, rising terrace above terrorists, and its dogs that started up to bark at the strangers. Here, as elsewhere, the Tartars are a comely race. Stout but symmetrical in form, the face broad, the eyes black or bluish-gray with heavy lashes, and the nose often high and aquiline. The dress of the men was halfway between that of an Arab and a Russian. The women, shy but unveiled, wore wide trousers and loose upper garments. Some were barefoot, others had boots of yellow leather, and all let their hair hang to the waist in fine braids. Rarely have I seen prettier children, plump, grave little creatures in queer caps and frocks, peeping timidly round the corners of the houses as we approached, and then suddenly darting within. Two groups were collected in an open balcony with an old man for a teacher, and from small books before them they chanted together with only less noise than those Vambari heard in the bazaar of Bokhara. In an enclosure near one of the houses, several men and women were at work making cider, the women first pounding the apples in a large wooden trough, after which they were put into a rude press, while the juice was boiling down in a large, shallow copper pan over a fire kindled on the ground. The picturesquely attired men and women busy with the fruit, the bright-eyed children playing about, the grain, the apricots, the nuts, the tobacco, the onions, and red peppers drying in and around every house, made a scene of rustic plenty and simplicity charming to behold. One of the young women offered us cider in a wooden bowl. Another brought a basket of hazelnuts, and we were free to pick the ripe, delicious berries of the great mulberry trees at the foot of the hill. It was a mode of existence that enchanted me. Tired of the artificial, complicated life of the West, and had I followed the impulse of the moment, I should have sworn allegiance to the Prophet and taken up my abode in Yusuf by the sea. Tartars make up the larger part of the population of the Crimea. The power of their haughty Khans decreased until, nearly 100 years ago, Sahim, the last of the line, gave up his domains to the Russians, and for this was enticed to Constantinople by the indignant Turks, whose vassal he had been, and put to death. It was one of his luxurious predecessors who, when poisoned by a Greek at Bender, sent for his musicians that he might fall asleep pleasantly. And now their ancient palace, Seraglio of Gardens, stands like the Alhambra, a monument of splendor passed away. Many of their mosques are in ruins, while those families among them most rigidly attached to their faith and their traditions have sought on Turkish soil freedom from Christian rule. Yet those who remain seem content and light-hearted. Their bearing is easy and independent, and with the belief that all events are decreed, they resign themselves to their fate. Doubtless in an extreme of trial and mortification, they are consoled by that saying of Muhammad, so grateful to their fierce kindred, the Turkmens, "This world is a prison for believers, and a paradise for unbelievers." As a race they take life sunnily, and with their primitive habits and their trust in destiny are disposed to idleness. Yet they readily endure fatigue and are courageous and true-hearted. They have some manufacturers of felts and camel's hair cloth, but most of them are agriculturists or shepherds. Their land is irrigated and often well tilled, and on the steppes they have large herds of sheep and cattle, and by their nomadic instinct can find their way even when the trackless plains are white with snow. Their favorite food is mutton roasted on skewers with thin cakes of bread, after the fashion of the East. They delight in fruits and are enormous consumers of tobacco. Unavoidably, they will share the progress of the empire, and they will perhaps play an important part in its future. In the warm evening twilight, we walked about Yalta. The whole population on foot or in carriages thronged the streets, from the emperor attired as a private gentleman to the Tartars in black lambskin caps ornamented with colored beads. The music of a military band came from the barracks, and laughter and the hum of voices were heard on every side. Here and there were booths for the sale of fruit, especially the grapes of the country, large white and purple pyramids, delicious for eating, but which have not yet produced superior wines. In the shops were piles of gray-blue lambskins from the plains near Kerch, a color peculiar to the Crimea, and said, though I know not how truly, to be owing to a plant upon which the sheep feed. The varied crowd, the soft air, the mountains, and the sea won us to prolong our stroll till the pines were dim against the horizon and day had given place to stars. Then we turned back to the hotel in company with a group of Tartars sauntering homewards, for like all Mohammedans, they keep early hours, and the last person we saw on the promenade was the Georgian prince, looking strikingly handsome in an embroidered white tunic and a cap of snowy lambskin, which he raised in graceful recognition as we passed him by. So there's a few things to take from this. This is a great little chapter. I'm probably going to read some more of the book as well in search of Tartarian stuff. But I don't know, I love just learning about interesting places and getting to get a glimpse of what it was like to travel around there. It always seems like in these stories of people traveling in the olden times that like everything was more free. People were growing everything. Everyone was getting along very nice. Like princes and royalty were just walking around. Like ego wasn't really nearly as much of a thing, although it probably was for the royalty. But it seems like they kind of, they didn't really need to be protected. So it just seemed a lot different. Everyone seems free. Everyone seems friendly. Everyone does what they do to survive and exist beautifully in a spiritual just place with nature full blown into it, and everything just seems pretty awesome. I love hearing about these people. I hope we uncover more and more as time goes on. If you find any things that are Tartarian tales, let me know, or share them on your own as well. I'd love to see them. Bless you all.